The books is in. The books are in. Yep. They in. They're here.
Log in to KofiPaisaTV.com and get Spears of the Mossy Volume 1 by Kofi Paisa Research Team, from Spears the Pen Volume 2 by Kofi Paisa Research Team, Spiritual Combat Volume 3 by Kofi Paisa Research Team, One Night Before Bed by Any Harret Shun Kalfunny, Kalawa's Trip to the Motherland by Kofi Paisa, From Cocaine to Consciousness by Any Harret Shun Kalfunny, As I Learned, We All Learn by Kofi Paisa. Also, if you want fresh merch, go to our online store, Family Connect Apparel, and get all the brands. Also, get our 54 deck of quiz and educational cards available now on KofiPaisaTV.com.
ETM Hotel Rennie Sean, welcome and peace. My name is Sean. I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in to the Massa Warrior Clan YouTube channel. Please like the show, share the show, tell a friend, tell a friend. We're about to get it in. I appreciate everybody that's actually in the building right now down there. What's good? Let me see what else we have before we get started. We got brothers from the UK, brother Damo. We got Chavis in the building. What's good? Chavez. We got let me see who else we got from West Africa and the whole nine, man. I'm gonna start a new series. It's gonna be called Diaries of the Clout Chaser. You know what I'm saying? Since somebody wanted to put that on me that I want to chase clout, I'm gonna start a series called Diary of the Clout Chaser. I don't chase clout. I stick to the information. Once you cross the line, then the line cross. Ain't no coming back. Not with me. You know what I'm saying? I'm not even into all of that. You know, you running off at your mouth and you doing all that. That's you. I'm not gonna waste my time with that. I'm writing books, right? I'm doing my Science with Sean show, right? I'm getting the culture and the information out there to the people on a methodical level. It ain't really about having 100 million viewers for me. I'm contending the small minds that I do collect. I'm getting great feedback from the people who actually pay attention to the information that I drop. You know, so I'm not really into entertaining it. I wish that everybody else would quit listening to all the noise in the background and focus on the goal at hand. I just put the link in the chat before I let Chambers come in here. Let me do something real quick. Hold on 1 second, Chambers. I'm finna let you in. Just bear with me 1 moment, sir. I just wanna share my screen. I wanna get this information out there to the viewers. Right? Come on now, like the show, share the show. Like the show, share the show. Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, education, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Got to put that out there. Before we get going, peace to Althea. Trick, what up? Ramon, what's good? Absolutely. Yeah, ain't nobody thinking about clown. before we get going on, Chapers, what's up, man? What's good? What's going on?
Oh, I'm chilling, man. I'm just trying to soak up some of this game and learn about this racism that these Arabs be showing. You know what I'm saying? I learned something.
Yeah, man. You know what I'm saying? We all got to learn a little something. Sometimes we forget. Sometimes we forget. Oh, how we forget.
Oh, how we forget. Well, that's what y'all here. That's what we here for. You know, to learn. You know, as we
Mm-hmm.
learn, we all learn. So we're gonna learn. I'm sitting back.
Yeah. So, Tim crazy. Yeah, man. I was gonna see if Kofi gonna come on, but I'm gonna go ahead and get to it. Baby for who the age, Juju. Hold up, yo. Hold on. Y'all ain't rocking with me right now. Come on, man. Hit that like button. Like the show, share the show. Get your people in the building. I know it's Mother's Day. I know y'all probably got your boyfriends and baby daddies, and you're cooped up. You're cooped up right now, tied to the bed. I understand all that, but telling Sean on right now is important. Tell your boo thing. Tell your husband. Tell your baby daddy. Tell your boyfriend, your friend boy, whatever you want to call it. Sean is live right now. We got to tune in. Then we can get back to the late night festivities before Monday morning. Now I already read the disclaimer, so my screen is sharing. Let's see what's going on in Morocco.
Behind these gates at Rabat Central Bus Station, a young migrant from Senegal was knifed to death on August 12. He lived in this poor neighborhood of the Moroccan capital. Here, like in many other Moroccan cities and towns, migrants hailing from sub-Saharan Africa face daily acts of violence.
I went out to buy something, so I saw three guys, three Moroccans, and they attacked me with a knife. They took my phone and some of my money.
Kingsley told us he felt lucky as he only suffered superficial knife wounds, but he said racism was rampant.
We are facing a lot of racism here in Morocco. They don't like we blacks. We don't have right for many things. You can't sit, you can't talk to a woman. You cannot talk to a woman. It's not allowed here in Morocco. They don't give out job to black people. Even if you have the qualification, even if you are capable of doing the job, they can't give the job to you because you're a black man here in Morocco.
His outrage over constant discrimination is shared by many other migrants.
They call us monkeys when we were all equals. We have the same red blood flowing in our veins. Even women spit when we walk by.
For local anti-racist groups, Moroccans tend to openly abuse black Africans due to the government's discriminatory treatment of migrants.
You're in a country where the government very much targets black, sub-Saharan, illegal immigrants, down to the very words used to describe them. Immigrants are always linked to prostitution, AIDS, drugs, and human trafficking. I think this plays an important role. Institutional racism influences the local population.
Faced with increasing racist attacks, some migrants, illegal or not, are now thinking of returning home, even at the cost of feeling ashamed over their failure to make it abroad.
A lot of people don't know this, but the best way to make money with Amazon.
Sorry about that. So we just saw that video, right? And before we go any further, you actually heard from the sub-Saharan Africans in Morocco, how they're treated. But then you'll hear someone like a Sabir Bey or somebody along those lines say that they treat us like kings, like we belong over there, like we really getting the royal treatment and so on and so forth in Morocco. Like we're free to go wherever we want to and do all of these things, and they romanticize it to the highest caliber. But here it is. here it is. The sub-Saharan Africans that are in Morocco can't even get jobs. They discriminated against. The women and the men spit at their feet. The men can't even get women in Morocco. So when we talk about racism in Arab Africa, because that's what I'm calling it in Arab Africa, when you come from the trails of where Islam comes from, when you come from Arabia into Africa via northern Kemet, and then you come through North Africa down into Morocco. You don't come through North Africa and then shortcut through the Sahara. You come through North Africa and then you come all the way around until you get to Morocco. Until you get to Mauritania, right? When you get to Mauritania, then you come into Senegal first. When you come into Senegal, then you come into the entryways of Balad El Sudan, the land of the blacks. When you come into the land of the blacks, you are now in the land of the blacks, and you are demonstrating that you know that these people are the blacks. So they make a clear distinction of who's who. And then we have the nerve to say that, black people racist or Afrocentrics or racist or whatever. No. See, you don't understand what Afrocentrism is. Afrocentrism or Afrocentricity or Afrocentrics is not built on the foundation of racism. It is a model. It is a methodological model. It's a model. See, you got to understand when you talk about Afrocentricity. Let me go a little bit further for the ignorant. So I'm gonna go to one book, right? I'm gonna get back on subject. I'm gonna go to one book. Oh, my bad. I'm gonna go to one book. It's called Afrocentricity. Let's deal with the man who actually talks about it. It's his mind. He introduces it. Afrocentricity, the theory of social change, by Malife Akite Ashanti. This is his work. All right, I read this years ago, but it's always some fool that misrepresent what Ashanti is saying. So here's the definition of Afrocentricity. Afrocentricity is a mode of thought and action in which the centrality of African interests, values, and perspective predominate. In regards to theory, it is the placing of African people in the center of an analysis of African phenomena. Thus, it is possible for anyone to master the discipline of seeking the location of Africans in a given phenomena. In terms of action and behavior, it is a devotion to the idea that what is in the best interest of African consciousness is at the heart of ethical behavior. Finally, Afrocentricity seeks to enshrine the idea that Blackness itself is a trope of ethics. Thus, to be Black is to be against all forms of oppression, racism, classism, homophobia, patriarchy, child abuse, pedophilia, and white racial domination. We see, therefore, how Afrocentricity is the centerpiece of human regeneration. It challenges and takes to task the perpetration of white racial supremacist ideas in the imagination of African world, and by extension, the entire world, to the degree that is incorporated into the lives of millions of Africans on the continent and in the diaspora. It has become revolutionary, attacking the very falsification of truth and attitudes of self-hatred that have oppressed a great many of us. Thus, Afrocentricity is purposeful, given a true sense of destiny based upon the facts of history and experience. The psychology of the African without Afrocentricity is a matter of great concern. Instead of looking out from one's own center, the non-Afrocentric person operates in a manner that is negatively predictable. He or she will attack mothers and fathers disparage the very traditions that gave them hope in times of hopelessness, and trivialize their own nobility. The person's images, symbols, lifestyles, and manners are contradictory and thereby destructive to a personal and collective group and development, unable to call upon the power of ancestors because of one does not know them, without an ideology of heritage, because of one does not respect one's own prophets. The person is like any ant trying to move a large piece of garbage only to find that it will not move. Thus, afrocentricity is a philosophical perspective associated with the discovery, location, and actualizing of African agency within the context of history and culture. By agency is meant an attitude toward action originating in African experiences. As such, Afrocentricity provides the theorist and the practitioner with clear and precise channels of analysis. I'm going to stop right there because that just gives you a blueprint of what Afrocentricity is. It doesn't promote racism. It doesn't allow you to be racist. It is a model, a tool to center yourself. Whites have them, Japanese have them, Chinese have them. You want examples of that? The Chinese come to America to educate themselves, learn, and then after their education is done, they go back to China, build on Chinese wealth and Chinese greatness to move China forward. If it's not done and they build businesses here in America, they take the money that they make and they send it back home, allowing to reinvest in China's benefit. The Japanese do it. The Koreans do it. The Mexicans that you pay cash to cut your grass and do all the other things, or your landscaping and things of that nature, construction, they do it. They send their money back to Mexico. They stack their money up. They live in one house. It be 8 of them. They run their money up and they send their money back to their families and stuff like that. They do that. But no, don't let a black person find that nobility in oneself to empower themselves to invest back in Africa, and then center themselves in their Africology and their Africana studies to learn more about who they are and where they come from. No, you racist now. You racist now. So again, I'm going to replay this video because Sutek is here and I don't think he's seen it earlier. And I don't want to revert back to something that we seen without the brother understanding what we just played. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to replay the video, and then we're going to go further and we're going to discuss who's really racist in this scenario. We shouldn't even be having this conversation. But since we are, we might as well learn from it, right? Hold on, y'all. My thing, and let me go back. There we go.
Behind these gates at Rabat Central Bus Station, a young migrant from Senegal was knifed to death on August 12. He lived in this poor neighborhood of the Moroccan capital. Here, like in many other Moroccan cities and towns, migrants hailing from sub-Saharan Africa face daily acts of violence.
I went out to buy something, so I saw three guys, three Moroccans, and they attacked me with a knife. They took my phone and some of my money.
Kingsley told us he felt lucky as he only suffered superficial knife wounds, but he said racism was rampant.
We are facing a lot of racism here in Morocco. They don't like we blacks. We don't have right for many things. You can't sit, you can't talk to a woman. You cannot talk to a woman. It's not allowed here in Morocco. They don't give out job to black people. Even if you have the qualification, even you are capable of doing the job, they can't give the job to you because you're a black man here in Morocco.
His outrage over constant discrimination is shared by many other migrants.
They call us monkeys when we were all equals. We have the same red blood flowing in our veins. Even women spit when we walk by.
For local anti-racist groups, Moroccans tend to openly abuse Black Africans due to the government's discriminatory treatment of migrants.
You're in a country where the government very much targets Black, sub-Saharan, illegal immigrants, down to the very words used to describe them. Immigrants are always linked to prostitution, AIDS, drugs, and human trafficking. I think this plays an important role. Institutional racism influences the local population.
Faced with increasing racist attacks, some migrants, illegal or not, are now thinking of returning home, even at the cost of feeling ashamed over their failure to make it abroad.
All right, so that's the video right there. So let me hit you again. This time I'm coming from the hip. I'm coming from A History of Race in Muslim West Africa, 1600 to 1960 by Bruce S. Hall. This is part of African Studies, Cambridge. In the introduction on page 2, he states, along the Sahel in West Africa, a long history of racial language is evident in the writings of Muslim intellectuals well before the arrival of Europeans. Sahelian writers made a fundamental distinction between whites, Badan, for those who claimed Arab pedigrees, and blacks, Sudan. In these texts, blackness worked as a marker of inferiority that created significant legal disability for people who could be labeled in this way. When the Sahel was colonized by France beginning in the late 19th century, the colonial administration used these existing local conceptions of racial difference in the organization of its rule, in part because they corresponded to European denigrations of people defined as black. If we wish to understand the ways the racial languages work today in the countries of the African Sahel, we must explore the intellectual history of this region in much great depth. Only then will we be able to evaluate the influence that European racial ideologies had in shaping post-colonial political language and the extent of which Mamadani's evaluation of Rwanda, or more recently Darfur, offers a convincing explanation of this history. I'm gonna give you this this book right here. Right? Now there's more. There's more, but I'm gonna stop right here, and I'm not gonna go into to this a little bit more because there's some stuff that I'm actually working on in a chapter in my up and coming book. Once I finish this one chapter, then I'm going to transition into another chapter, and I'm gonna go a little bit into some of this other racism. Now, we already did this in volume 2, but we're going to elaborate a little bit more. Brother Sutek and myself both wrote on how Arabs was so racist, and we give tons of examples of this racism. So much so that their favorite, I'm not sharing my screen. I was reading from a book. So much so that Battuti, the well-renowned traveler, the Arab traveler, right, when he came into West Africa, he was sick to his stomach because he seen the Negroes, the blacks, the Sudan. He seen the blacks practicing Islam. It made him sick to his stomach. And they was walking around like kings. He couldn't believe what he saw. How could these slaves walk around and hold themselves up high? Because the Badani, right, saw themselves different from the Sudanic. I am specifically using their terminology to distinguish themselves. See, most people, when they heard about whites in West Africa, they were thinking like whites like Europeans. No, it was a cultural difference that was there. And they made that difference long before Europeans stepped foot in West Africa. But this traveled from the time they left Arabia and came into Northeast Africa and coming around the north into Mauritania and so forth. This made it easy for people like the Amuzai, who saw themselves as different as well, to accept and adopt Islam during their conversion. This paved the way for them to, what Brother Sutek always tell you, to enslave blacks. because they looked at like jobs like farming. Oh, that's black people's job. Let's enslave them and have them farm for us. They made these distinctions. They didn't need Europeans. They didn't need the 1800 European or early 1900 Europeans to draw up a racial construct. They already had one before it was even racism. This construct is Arab at the root of it. During the earliest encounters. So I want to go, but before I go, you know, Brother Sutek is on the panel. I do want to give him a chance to speak, introduce himself, and then he can, if he got something he want to break out, you know what I'm saying, he can get to it. But go ahead, Brother Sutek.
Yeah, man. Peace to the fam. It's your brother Sutek, Kofi Paisai research team representative. I just think it's crazy that we still had to have this conversation in 2021. That just like John Henry Clark said, you just let me know what you have not read, and this is the reason why you should get Spears of the Mossy, Volume 1, and also what we dealt with this in from Spears Depends, Volume 2. We specifically dealt with this. And if we're speaking on Berbers, I put out multiple presentations on this, showing you how Berbers or the Amazigh looked at themselves in relation to us and how they looked at us, how they view us. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, when Arabs came through, it kind of deepened their feelings about blacks, but like you said, that system was already in place. They was already pushing black Africans out of North Africa before Europeans and Arabs stepped onto the scene. And what they would do was lie about it. I've shared videos in these presentations talking about where governors in certain towns in North Africa, black governors, discussing how they will deny racism, they will deny slavery, they will deny any contentions between Berbers and Arabs and Africans. So we know what they're gonna do. We know they're gonna deny it. We know they're gonna romanticize their culture and act like nothing is wrong, everything is peaches and cream. We know that. But am I supposed to take these people's words over the primary information, over the primary sources of these black men and women in North Africa telling you and showing you that, yo, this has been going on. They don't mess with us. We can't go to their schools. We can't even go to the hospital. They leave us the scraps in the Sahara, the Southern Sahara. Those Tuaregs make the black Africans, which is called the Haratine, do all the agricultural and backbreaking work, and whatever is produced from that, their masters, these Berbers that's over them, that is enslaving them, is taking 2/3 of what they produce. And yeah, North Africa, several parts of North Africa have abolished quote unquote slavery in the 1960s and again in the 1980s. But the thing about it is, these black Africans that are enslaved by these Berbers, the mentality is, okay, so we free, but we don't got nowhere to go. We don't have that same connection with our old culture that we used to have. We don't have no family. We don't have no friends. We don't have any place to live. We don't have any food to sustain us. So it looks like we stuck with our master. You know what I'm saying? And it's just crazy that people are still trying to deny this in 2021, like with all the evidence that we got out now.
Mm-hmm. Let me back you up a little bit. When the medieval Moroccan traveler Ibn Battuta visited Western African Sahel in 1352 and 53, he brought with him a North African conception of racial difference that appears to have been unfamiliar to people within whom he interacted. In a written narrative of his travels, Batuta repeatedly distinguished between three principal types of people found in the area. He says, Berbers, blacks, and whites. It is clear that those he identified as whites included only people like himself, Arab expatriates from North Africa or the Middle East, who resided in the commercial towns along the Sahel, most of whom were merchants. With one exception, color terminology was not used to identify or describe the Berber-speaking people from the Sahel who are mentioned in his narrative, such as the Masufa and the Walata and Timbuktu of the Badama and the Hakar of the southern and central Sahara. For Batuta, the use of the term white implied a set of Arab Muslim cultural practices that his local Berber-speaking host, although Muslims, did not share. He was so scandalized by the freedom Masufa Berber women appeared to enjoy in their social interaction with men, and by the matrilineal system of descent that he compared local Berber speaking to non-Muslims he had encountered in South Asia. The use of color terminology and marking human difference was not uncommon in medieval North Africa and the Middle East. What Batuta meant when he used color categories to distinguish between the people he met in West Africa was a set of differences that we might recognize as primarily cultural. Despite descriptions of physical similarities between Berbers and those Batuta labeled variously as whites, Arabs, Moroccans, and so on, the Berbers could not be included among the whites because of their distance from and the foreignness to the normative cultural practices of Arab Muslim world, at least as they were understood by Batuta. Since we only have Batuta's account to guide us, it cannot be determined with any confidence how people in the Sahel thought of themselves. However, those that Batuta identified as Berbers and blacks do not appear to have identified themselves in Northern Africa or Middle Eastern ancestors. Furthermore, there is no identification of imminent between Batuta's Berber hosts and local representatives of the Mali Empire, which was the dominant political force in the region, and whom Batuta identified as blacks. So there lies the problem when we talk about this whole cultural thing. And what people don't seem to understand is that when they're labeling things like that, when they use the term Berbers, when they use the term blacks, when they use the term Badan or whites, they're talking about culture. He's talking about culture, and it's always been that. This is how we know that sub-Saharan Africans are different culturally than the Berbers and then the Arabs. So when we're sitting here and we're drawing these distinctions, we are merely talking about culture. We don't say that the North African Berbers are not African. You don't hear us arguing that. But because of the cultural differences, the North African Berbers will enslave us because there's cultural differences. And then the negative connotations come in, and then they fester in these people, and then it gets a little out of hand. Especially when you get the whites that come into the land, like the Portuguese and the influence of their guns and money. Because now it's a wrecking crew at that moment. But before the Portuguese and the influence of Europe nations coming into West Africa like that, the Berbers and these Badani, the whites or the Arabs, were already drawing negative connotations on blacks. So let me go ahead and share my screen. And by the way, I read that's in chapter 1 of the same book that I put on the screen, A History of Race in Muslim West Africa. You can find it on page 34 and 35. And it might be quoted somewhere else, but I just wanted to give it to you straight, scholarly information. So what I wanted to bag up exactly what my brother said. And I want to let me get with this right quick. So let me make it full on the screen. I'm not gonna do a lot of talking right here. But I just want to get to a page or two where you can see this actual influence. Now, if you're looking at the screen, it clearly states the Iberian roots of American racist thought. Now, you can find this article on JSTOR. I actually dropped all the source links in the description of this video, so you'll be able to pull whatever you need to pull from me. You'll be able to cross-reference it and go from there. See, I'm not just going to talk you to death. Demonstration beat conversation. I'm not going to no wiki. I ain't doing none of that. I'm not finna sit here and play on people's ignorance. This is not what I do. I stick true to the methodology and I answer the question. The question why African slavery emerged as the primary form of exploited labor in the Americas during the 16th and 17th century has engaged the attention of scholars for years. Although a consensus seemed to have emerged that the growth of capitalism played a major role in the establishment of survival of African slavery in Americas, heated debate continues over the extent to which racism played a part in this development. The issue of which came first, racism or slavery, is central to this debate. Some historians accept Eric Williams' assertion that slavery was not born of racism, rather racism was the consequence of slavery. Though the origin debate may at first glance seem artificial or analytically unimportant, it can reveal fundamental truths about the trajectory of racist ideology in Western culture. Locating the crystallization of racist ideology in Europe before 1492 shifts the focus of the origins of the debate from American economic explanations to European cultural ones. The search for the roots of racial ideology might begin in ancient times. This article explores only the immediate foundations of racism in modern Western thought. Now, many historians of colonial Latin America insist that racism was not present in Iberia before 1492. They argue instead that racial stratification was a product of American economic conditions. So this article, and I'm going to tell you why I'm going here, contains that the racism and capitalism were not inextricably bound together, and that the racism that came to characterize American slavery was well established in cultural and religious attitudes in Spain and Portugal by the 15th century. Such attitudes were reinforced by European political turbulence and the decline of Mediterranean slave trade. The racist beliefs that Iberians and others would later refine to a science were firmly entrenched before Columbus made landfalls in America. This racial idiom became more rigid as capitalist imperatives gained strength. While these views do not entirely contradict Williams' thesis, they move away from the mechanistic economic explanations and attempt to show the evolution of racist thinking from feudalism to capitalism, from Europe to the Americas. To use the term race in the 15th century, Iberian context may be problematic. The social context must be considered when examining the functions of racial identification. Though the concept of race was not unknown in the 15th century, the word raza in Italian, raza in Castilian, raca in Portuguese, and race in French simply referred to a group of plants, animals, or humans that share traits through a shared genealogy. Now, if you're familiar with the slave trade and the involvement of razes, that word again, that wordplay, right? That's where that comes from when you see the Ashanti being labeled as razes. They're talking about a group of people that shared the same traits or genealogy. Raiding traditionalists, they call them razes. Now, not until the 18th-19th century did scientists begin using race to legitimize claims of human biological superiority or inferiority. Now, in order for Black people or centrists or Afrocentrists to be, or Afrocentrics to be racist, they would have to establish some form of human biological superiority over another people. Because if you can't establish superiority over another people, you can't gain some form of actual racism. You can't be racist if you're not the dominant class. Now, though the pseudoscientific classification of persons based on race in the 18th and 19th century gave greater legitimacy to racism, This new science merely reinforced old ideological notions. Some might argue that medieval and pre-modern prejudices were based on European ideas of civility, religion, or culture. But the imposition of all humanity of an universal culture and European conception of man sidesteps the issue of racism. Early modern Europeans conflated what we now call culture with what we call race. Now you see why I'm reading this. Because I just told you that Battuti distinguished people by basically cultural differences. He labeled them blacks, he labeled them Berbers, he labeled them Badani, or basically the Arabs, because they were similar to him. Okay? So there was cultural differences. So it went from cultural differences to now a thing called race. Thus, for the early modern period, race and culture cannot be easily separated. A people's inferior culture implied a biological inferior people. Behavior patterns and life ways that Europeans viewed as aberrant were linked to genetically fixed qualities, especially phenotype and skin color, even when these inferior others adopted European cultural and religious forms. They cannot avoid the stigma of cultural inferiority that their physical appearance proclaimed. The dialect between culture and phenotype operated in such a way that sub-Saharan Africans were unable to escape their inferior status. Skin color, as an insignia of race, remained the indelible marker of cultural and thus racial inferiority. Now, the concept of race is a useful tool for understanding the dynamic power relationships in the early modern period. Europeans invented themselves as white, Africans as black, and later Indians as reds. In the resulting social hierarchy, whites were always superior and blacks occupied the lowest rung. Indians and persons of mixed race descent fell in between. In Iberia, once the traits of the infidel and slave became associated with blackness, race became the driving force of the formulation of Spanish and Portuguese attitudes towards sub-Saharan Africans. The purpose of this article, racism, can be understood as a reduction of social, cultural to the somatic. Now, from what I just read, you actually can see the behavior and the mindset of the European thought transpire. But what I read before I read this had everything to do with the Muslims or the Arabs train of thought. When we go to people like Battuti, who is supposedly a world-renowned traveler, who's heavily sourced by not only Arabs, but Europeans, and even some blacks. So the ideology behind it all orchestrates from people's worldview on how they see us. And it gets worse. So I'm going to stop right here, and I'm going to yield the floor to Brother Sutek or Chavis if you got something you want to add to the bill, or if you want to share your screen and get into it, my brothers, feel free. But I'm gonna stop right here where I'm at.
I just want to say that's sociology 101. You just went down, you broke that down. That's pretty much where the issue be, like the distinction between culture and races. Like people blend them two words together and they is not the same.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, man, you going in. Shit, I was about to share my screen and throw a little something at them, but like, man, I already done did this shit, bro. Like, yeah, you better get volume 2. Like that source that you just pulled from, I sourced that in volume 2 too. So, man, y'all got to get with it, bro.
Yeah. So,
yeah,
go ahead, bro.
Nah, I was just about to say, this shit been going on, man. And like I said, when the Arabs came, it kind of strengthened those feelings about blacks due to the Arabization of the landscape of North Africa. The Arabs was already You know what I'm saying? Before they came, they was already racist against black folks too. You know what I'm saying? Via the Hamitic hypothesis, they was using the Talmud, I want to say the Babylonian Talmud, and that was changed from the original script to say, Noah's son was cursed to be black and have big lips and hair like peppercorn and all that nonsense. So that's where it started from with Arabs. Well, that ain't what it started from. They gave them justification. And then they brought it over to North Africa, which strengthened the Berbers' feelings already that they had towards black. So, yeah, man, you going in?
Yeah, so I want to go back to my making a race in the Sahel. And basically, they're telling us right here the Arab writers inherited two principal ideas about race from pre-Islamic Mediterranean sources: an environmental theory about human difference and the biblical stories about Noah's sons, Shem, Japheth, and Ham. I'm bagging you up. It's crazy, too. The intellectual depth that Arab writers had to earlier thinkers was often quite explicit. For instance, Al-Musaidi in 956, for example, writing in the 10th century, quoted the second century Greek physician Galen on the inferior physical qualities of blacks, saying that merriment dominates the black man because of his defective brain, whence also the weakness of his intelligence. Arab writers generally reproduced the classical Mediterranean or Mediterranean-centered theory of geography that divided the world into 7 distinct regions of climes, of which the medial fourth zone, or we'll call it middle fourth zone, that coincided with the Mediterranean region, was thought to be temperate, the ideal for the development of human beings and civilizations. The extreme cold and oppressive heat in the northern and southern regions were blamed for the deficiencies of Europeans and Africans, respectively. And according to the 4th century Syrian geographer Dimashak, drawing extensively on early writers, he says the equatorial region is inhabited by communities of blacks who are by numbered among the savages and beasts. Their complexions and hair are burnt, and they are physically and morally deviant. Their brains almost boil from the sun's excessive heat. The human being who dwells there is crude fellow with a very black complexion and burnt hair, unruly, with stinking sweat and abnormal constitution, much closely resembling in his moral qualities a savage or animals. Now, I don't need to use that description of a source. I actually can go to the corpus. The corpus, right? I can source the corpus to grab Damashik's writing. He's not the only person who took this perception of how, and remember now, he's Badani, or he's an Arab. He's not the only person to take this perception about us. They heavily influenced, and we're just reiterating, they heavily influenced the Berbers in North Africa. So they already had this perception way before others. They were enslaving us and doing them up. Now I want to go to a second course, and I just want to top it off right here. And then I want to kind of, get back to my brothers. All right, this is right here. It's called Ending Denial, Anti-Black Racism in Morocco. Now, it says Morocco is a diverse country that has yet to come to terms with its own black population and the impact of centuries of the trans-Saharan slave trade. Diversity, the history of slavery in Morocco, and racism that is generally inherited in post-slave societies are not openly discussed and often denied by non-blacks. This paper examines the efforts of Black Moroccans to tell the stories of racial discrimination against them as a first step in an attempt to raise awareness, piece the taboos, and end the denial surrounding anti-Black racism in Morocco. Now, this is written by Stephen J. King. His credentials is over here. All right. You can download the PDF. Of course, this in the description. It says enough. It's time to end the denial, pierce the taboos, raise consciousness about the problem, and confront the criminalize anti-Black racism and discrimination in Morocco. This is the message young Black Moroccan activists are conveying as they organize and commiserate with fellow Black Moroccans on social networks like Black Moroccans and the Mazi Project on Instagram and Facebook. Racism exists everywhere in the world, but varies according to the context. In the Moroccan context, anti-Black racism is pronounced, widespread, and largely denied by non-Black despite Moroccan participation in the trans-Saharan slave trade for 13 centuries and the socio-economic marginalization of the country's Black minority until present day. This was written in 2020, y'all. At the most basic level of daily life, local activists combating anti-Black racism in Morocco point out the contempt towards Black Arabs and Black Berbers in Morocco and towards Black people in general is casually and prominently manifested in the words white or non-Black Moroccans, without reflection commonly used to refer to Moroccan's minority Black population. El Abad, which means slave. El Kadim, servant. El Hartini, you're going to see these words again. They're in writings. Freed Black slave. El Azi, roughly somewhere in between Negro and nigger. El Kalouche, Blackie. Winnet Kalouche, and me, and I am a Blackie, said when white Moroccans jest about being asked to do something unpleasant. The animalization of Black people in Morocco is not infrequent. This form of racial mockery seems mostly targeted at migrant from sub-Saharan Africa. Black people in Morocco can be called Kurd, monkey, Khazir, pig, Akil Lahmi al-Bashar, cannibal, and Hayawan, animal. They may be greeted by the sounds monkeys supposedly make, gurar, gurar. The heritage of Black Moroccans is frequently denied and accosted with the vil attack of the phrase, Mniti, where are you from? Said by the fellow citizens as if true Moroccans are all white. That hurts severe feelings. It should, but doesn't in Moroccan context, go without saying that using the words abid and kadim, which basically means slave and servant, to refer to Black people is despicable, offensive, and racist. Yet, many Moroccans deny the charge, utilize the words frequently and freely, and claim that racism doesn't exist in Morocco. Black Moroccans also do not experience being called Aziz, Kalouche, etc. as terms of affection or forms of friendly teasing and humor, as their non-Black Moroccan friends and acquaintances often claim. Far from it, Black Moroccans also recognize that when non-Black Moroccans make fun of dark skin or tightly curled hair, they are participating in racist microaggressions that are meant to hurt and subjugate. I'm not going to go through the entire article, but you can see where we're going with this. This was written in August of last year. It's not too long ago. And this comes out from people. This ties into the video we led this discussion with. This lets you know the mind of the Moroccan. This lets you know the mind of most of the people in Mauritania. They have distinguished themselves as separate from everyone else. They're either Badani or they are Berberish, and they know who the Blacks are, and they don't like the Blacks. They discriminate against the Blacks, and they look down on the Blacks. So again, I'm trying to understand, how could we say that these Berbers can determine, or not determine, these Berbers not be racist when they have shown racial behaviors since we've encountered them, and even before then. So this bill goes directly back to the point of a question that not really, I don't know if you really asked the question, but I'm gonna say a comment that you actually made on another guy's platform in the comment thread, Sutek, when you were trying to clearly establish that while we listening to these Berbers, they've been more racist than anybody. And here we are, we finna have a kumbaya with a bunch of Berbers on a subject matter because you trying to argue against some of the romanticists on certain set subjects. You're appealing to authority at that point because you don't know the history of the Berbers like you think you know them. Because if you're smart, you wouldn't be listening to these people. Look at this. They're telling you their story in this article. They're breaking it down piece by piece. They've been trying to get this. Let me see if I can say this right. They've been looking for this. The sub-Saharan Africans in Morocco have been looking for the same equality that we have in America, except for we're a little bit more advanced in our equality or unjust than they are. We've made grounds. They haven't made a tenth of the grounds that we've made here in America. Our sub-Saharan brothers and sisters in Africa. But I know somebody dropped and probably came back on. So
yeah, it was me.
Go ahead.
Nah, go ahead. I'm oh, you done?
Yeah, I'm done.
Yeah, I just want to play this real quick. Hold on.
Back to you. There's something, Tanya, I know you're poised and ready to speak. There's something I want to ask you first. Would you explain for us? And that is, there's a very complicated ethnic breakdown for Mauritania that outsiders have no idea what we're talking about. We've got white Moors and black Moors and Afro-Mauritanians. Can you just give us a very quick summary of the ethnic breakdown of Mauritania?
Yeah, I think this is a very important point in order for people to understand exactly what is taking place. To give a full picture of the population, the composition of the population is very important. In Mauritania, we have, the white Moors, we have the black Moors who are slaves and Haratids, and then you have the Negro Africans. In the context of Mauritania, it's politically correct to describe them as Negro Africans, living mainly in the south. They include Fulani, Soninke, Wolof, and Bambara. So in the context of Mauritania, when you consider, the color of the skin, Haratin and the foremost and slaves are included in the black community. So the black Mauritanian community represent, more than 70 to 75% of the population.
So let me just see if I can make this clearer. It's not about black and white in Mauritania, or are you saying it is about black and white? All right, so is that Nasser that's saying that?
Hey, notice when she asked, is it about black and white or is it not about black and white? Dude had to cut in. The Berber had to cut in on that part. That's the shit that we talking about, bro. You know what I'm saying? Peace, everything is everything. Peace to the chat, man. Yeah, I'm gonna get back to it, but just notice that and watch how he come in and try to lie about the situation, try to romanticize and lie about the situation. The brother is telling you what's going on from their perspective, and the Berber gonna come in and just straight lie about the shit.
Yes. Okay, hold on, yes. Tanya. Nasser, go ahead.
My point is that, for example, I could point to somebody like the Emir Abdurrahman Said Ahmed, who in the social pyramid will be basically at the very top of the pyramid. He looks like a black man.
And explain that to our international audience. And who is that person?
Abdurrahman Said Ahmed is no longer with us.
Okay.
He's the Emir, basically, of the Taganit area.
All right.
Which is basically the highest social rank anybody could achieve in Moorish society. So going strictly by the Western American black over white, it doesn't quite cut it.
So it's not strictly a black and white issue.
No, I don't agree at all.
Okay.
Pointing to one person to explain a situation is not a viable, argument. We have a situation, statistically, speaking, we have blacks and the Arabs in Mauritania. So there are always, exceptional situations. Exceptional situations should not be, the general rule. So that is, the point I am trying to make. And also to go back to the point Abidin made about, the help that is needed in order to resolve the issue of slavery in Mauritania is very important. As I said in my initial statement, passing a law is just a beginning. So the government should not sit down and assume that slavery is ended. Here in the US, slavery ended in 1865. After that, we had the Civil Rights Act of 1964. We have the voting right of 1965.
Tandy, I understand your point perfectly. I understand your point perfectly. Aberdeen, we have his audio back, so I really want to get him into the conversation. So Aberdeen, do jump back into it, and it's good to hear you.
Yeah, thank you. I was on mute. I think the question today.
Hey, I'm dead, pure black. But yeah, man, the brothers was basically telling you that if you are black, if you are a black native of Mauritania, you are a heretic. You are a slave, and that's how they treat you. You know what I'm saying? And so for the Negroes, which is the people that the sub-Saharan Africans that live in the South, and they may come up to visit. You know what I'm saying? But the Berber tried to interject and say, yo, well, that's not true because we had this woo-wop and woo-wop, and he looked black. He looked just like a black man. Like, what? All right. Well, I mean, I was kind of at a loss for words, but the brother like, yo, okay, pointing to one situation is not, that's just an exception to the rule. You know what I'm saying? That's not a viable argument for the case that you present. You see what I'm saying? That's just like saying, okay, we had Obama. That's like when white folks say, oh, y'all had a black president. So, you can't say America is racist. What? Yeah, we can. That's crazy. That's the same thing these folks doing. They'll deny it and hide it and do anything to try to make it seem like there's nothing racial going on in North Africa. Hey, it's crazy.
Yeah, but now I'm laughing at you and I'm laughing at Chef because it happened. You know what I'm saying? I didn't comment either, but the dude is using a Berber, from a whole nother place to argue about ancient Kemet. Yeah, it's crazy. So what I want to do here is I tried to share this one time before, man. And I don't have it to give y'all right now. So I'm going to just do it like this. Egypt's encounter with the West, race, culture, and identity by Cooney. Now, this is 448 pages. As you know, people are not going to read it. So I'm going to give you a version of the abstract. Now, the present study is an investigation into the process involved in interpreting ethnic identity in the ancient world. Specifically, it focuses on the various Libyan groups currently found in Egyptological literature who attest in ancient Egypt sources from the dawn of Egyptian civilization. Set within the broader theoretical discussion of identifying social and cultural differentiation in the ancient world, this thesis will explore the manner in which the identity of Libyan groups has been interpreted by modern scholars. So this basically is focused on, quote unquote, the Libyans, right? Because you have to focus on one people. You just can't run amok and just start doing or classifying all of these people. So you have to see how the Remech review these people. So this book gets into that. There's some great arguments and attestations. There's some, some primary sources that actually corroborate what's going on during their encounters with how they view people. But most importantly, what we see in this book is the table of nations is brought about, right? So it's books like this, and I'm bringing this out because it's books like this that help us identify how the Remech and others viewed other people in ancient times. Instead of speculating, instead of assuming, instead of removing, instead of reclassifying, and then yielding to pseudo anthropolitical and pseudo historical perspectives of certain Facebook Wikipedia type of guys. You get into the work because of the methodology of culture history, right? You have to deal with the methods. Race and racism. I'm doing this slowly because this actually, and I need to give it to y'all, but I gave you the title of the book. This helps you to identify the things. Just look at the first paragraph right here when you get into race. It says race as opposed to racism will be here defined as the division of human beings based on phenotypical variations, usually, though not always, related to pigmentation. There is nothing inherently wrong with dividing up human populations in this way. In fact, one could argue that it is quite normal and to some degree scientific, and as much as it allows the quantification of people based on the physical characteristics. As a scientific tool, however, it is largely useless. Once you have divided the world in such a way, there is very little else you can obtain from it, since not all people with blue eyes or red hair or olive complexion will ever behave in the same way or identify themselves only based on these features. The problem arises and racism emerges when members of the group declare inequality with the other groups and attempt to create hierarchical typologies and stereotypes of others based on non-scientific beliefs and inheritability of mental and or emotional traits based on external biological features. Isaac has suggested that racism is not a scientific theory or concept, but a complex of ideas, attitudes, and forms of behavior which are themselves, by definition, irrational. He goes on and continues the argument, and it's a good argument that is laid there. But we're talking about adhering to Berbers from another side of Africa on the subject matter of the Remech and how they viewed the people around them, their neighbors and foreigners to the land, as acceptable in the realm of a conversation that people are trying to hash out. They're doing it wrong, but trying to hash out without any evidence, without even relying on the Remech themselves. So a North African Berber, as racist as they come, already is going to sit here and tell us who some people in Northeast Africa was and how they identified and all these other things. So all of that ties into this conversation because we're misrepresenting the origin of the argument and understanding of the text when we don't rely on the sources themselves who are speaking for themselves and they're right there attestations. So I brought this book out. Let me get on down to help. Y'all seen images like this. You had a meta nature right there. You got these bonded people and they wrapped around. They got this little afro looking thing, possibly with their little chin thing. Yeah, you seen that. You seen other images like this. It looks like somebody's bound and all these other things. You got other images that are coming up. Here's a better look at it, right? And you have these people making all these assertions. They're not reading the Medu Neter that's written on the walls. They're making assertions, and then they're arguing, and then they're making separations, and then they're drawing classifications that don't even exist in ancient Kemet. The amalgamation of people that were currently there is crazy. But anyway, this book is useful in the argument to actually help people disseminate how the Remech viewed the Libyans, and notice it's always in quotations, the Libyans for a particular reason. And you basically can get into this. One of the reasons that we highly recommended, Bujawa actually recommended this book. But, you know, my favorite part of it is that it gives us how this guy is writing in the perspective and what evidence is he using to argue his point. And he makes his argument based on the evidence that's available. And then you can go back and you can cross-reference his sources or his argument, and then you could deal with the data because he's going to outline it. Now, what do you find very interesting here on this map is Morocco, Tanzania, Algeria, Libya, Fezzan, Tibesti, Burma, the Niger, the Chad, the Sudan. Kemet is all up here by themselves. The Mediterranean. You got all these different places over here. The Southern Oasis. And notice how on this map, the rest of ancient Kemet is not mentioned. So, you know, y'all know who this dude is right here, right? That's a Greek name that they're using, but they're talking about the Table of Nations, the 18th dynastic period. See, look, binding scene with Nubian and Syrians, but you don't really talk about that. Nubians and Syrians. This is why you get into this text and you understand how they view people, but they're writing about them in more context. You don't see these scenes. But let me get off that, man. I'm giving y'all way too much for the pseudos to come and hit us with another Wikipedia and try to. What up, Conrad? What up, Pierre? Yep, it's correct. But I just don't want to make it a whole thing like that. I wouldn't say there's no true connection, Chef, as far as the conversation. But when you're talking about ancient times, I get what you're saying. I'm with you on the path that you're taking. Absolutely. Why are we using Berbers from Morocco to argue about ancient Egypt in a group chat, in Facebook? I get that. I don't understand that at all, and I don't understand the points that the dude is trying to use. But it's all underhandedness. And to the degree, you know, those Arabs came across, you know what I'm saying? So when those Arabs came across and they did their conversions, I mean, that's how they get Islam. And then that helps, like we said earlier, inspire their ignorance. And, you know, we're going to stand on that. Sute, you got something? Chavis?
Nah, I'm looking for something.
Okay. You looking? Keep looking then. I'm gonna throw this up there. I'm gonna get back to this the article right here. So I'm gonna come back to the Iberian roots of racist thought, and I'm gonna go to 149, where it's interesting right here. It says, in Muslim cosmology, the sub-Saharan African emerged as the son of Ham, destined to perpetual servitude. The Hamitic curse provided a justification for the increase in debasement of sub-Saharan Africans. Muslim vilification of blacks was constantly being refined as blackness, and slavery came to be regarded as synonymous. Muslims came to view slavery as the condition that best suited sub-Saharan Africans. It had been an integral part of Islamic society since the religion's beginning. Now, I had this article, and I ain't gonna lie, I had this to go in parts of an argument that I was going to make, but I left this quote out and didn't even bother to use this article because I had some other sources that was saying similar stuff, but also gave me what I actually needed to expound on a little further. But, you know, this is basically repetitive information that we've known for quite some time, and that it's, you know, it's written, it's documented by the Muslims. The black pagans of sub-Saharan Africa were the most vulnerable to Muslim conquest and enslavement for several reasons. First, Islamic law prohibited the enslavement of freeborn Muslims. Moreover, no Christian or Jew living under the protection of Islamic government, which they call Jimé. Remember, Jimé, they just basically pay their tithes to practice their religion and their cultural beliefs and live amongst the Arabs, right? Sources of servile labor had to be found outside those countries living peacefully under Islamic rule. Under the late Middle Ages, captives were taken from north of the Mediterranean and south of the Sahara. When the European political stability and military organizations began to provide a formidable threat to Muslim dominance after the 11th century, the ethnically fragmented nations of Africa were a more inviting target for human exploitation. Blackness quickly became a metaphor for servitude, and the curse of Ham legitimized the continued subjugation of Black Africans. So they're justified twice: Islamic law and the biblical story for the curse of Ham. And it goes on to say, look, not only were blacks not Christians, but they were the Muslim servants, the heathen's heathen, doubly cursed by their status as non-believers and by their servile condition. The blackness of the sub-Saharan Africans contrasts more sharply with white Iberians than it did with tawny-colored Muslims, who constitute a majority of the Muslim population in Iberia and North Africa. The invidious perception of difference expressed in language that suggested Black inferiority became refined and sharpened by Muslim Jews and Christians of Iberian origin. The 18th century witnessed the first extensive contact between Europeans and sub-Saharan Africans in Iberia, as Moors, Arabs, and Berbers entered the peninsula with the invading Muslim armies. Along the Muslim-Christian border, racial religious tensions were especially high. Christians identified Muslims as infidels to be eliminated in the name of Christian God. Each side enslaved the other's prisoners of war, including women and children. Even though the Muslims ranged in skin color from whites to very dark brown, nearly all were distinguishable from white Christians by their physical appearance. As anthropologist St. Clair Drake has pointed out, skin color became a marker used by the Christians to identify and vilify the infidel. I'm gonna stop right there. I'm gonna yield the floor to my brother Sutek.
Yeah, man, them demis, like you see the Berbers, they let be demis. You see, they let the Jews, everybody else except for the people who practice what was called pagan beliefs or pagan culture, pagan religions. Those who weren't people of the book, meaning the Bible. But even when West Africa became Muslims, and I'm speaking generally, but even when Islam hit West Africa and we began to adopt it, they were still enslaving us. They were still pulling slave raids, taking us back to North Africa to be sold in the Barbary Coast slave market. Like, it was still going on. What would be the difference? Okay, the Quran said you can enslave people that's pagan, but we Muslim now. Now what's the difference? Nothing but their black skin. Nothing but them being Negroes, quote unquote. That's it. Hold on, let me share my screen. So I'm gonna back up what you've been saying. Them Berbers and them Arabs in North Africa, Badanis, the Badan, Al Badan, the whites, the white Moors. The Badanis or the white Moors are ones of are one of two main subgroups of Moors of Mauritania. The white Moors have been accused of continuing the ancient practice of keeping slaves in present-day Mauritania. They are descendants from Berbers and Arabs. They are descendants of Berbers. So that's who these people are. These Berbers and Arabs of North Africa. These are the white Moors. They have been charged with continuing slavery, even after it's been abolished. This is all the stuff I've been saying. This is, hold on, let me get you the source on that. The Encyclopedia of Peoples of Africa and the Middle East, edited by Jamie Stokes. It's something light, something quick.
Done.
Yeah, that's all I wanted to throw in there. You killing it.
Man, well, you know, I don't want to keep us cooking too long, bro. We're approaching that hour 22. So I want to keep it where it's digestible. I just think we got to be careful when we're just running off at our mouth on social media and then Facebook groups just to be contentious for no reason. You know, hopefully today we learned a lot. We learned a lot from one another, and maybe we'll be able to continue the conversation to go a little bit further. I agree with Sheffrin on this one. I would accept a Sudanese or Libyan insight geographically before Moroccan. And yeah, I don't know why they're using a Moroccan Berber to argue in a Facebook group about the rematch. And, you know, Ujawu did a good job with just you know, reading the rest of the article that the sister was trying to use against him that day. And, you know, you had dude cheerleading and pom-pom and that. And you get to the conclusion, and the conclusion makes a clear distinction of, you know, the author's perspective of who's who and saying all of that, which the person who tried to use the source didn't. And I think Emiket caught that. But this goes back to behavioral problems. Like we're trying to hash out some things in the Black community that can be some misconceptions. We're trying to eradicate romanticism on some of the subject matters that allow us to remain ignorant. Because of the romanticisms, we're unable to advance ourselves scholastically in knowledge. So it becomes a hindrance. But at the same time, you can't go against the grain and then remove yourself from all of a sudden you were once upon a time, or was whatever, a so-called centrist or Afrocentrist in understanding, because you use it as a tool to center yourself and realize where you are in history and time based on your observation of the world. Now it's looked at as a sin to be centered in your own Africanness. And now you're deemed just as racist as white people or whatever. I think those charges and those claims are irresponsible and really ignorant. And more intelligent people should have this conversation versus the illiterate and unintelligent. You know what I mean? Because Wikipedia is only going to help you argue so far. And then you can only regurgitate so much from those little Facebook groups which some of this ignorance stems from. And if you don't rely on the worldviews of the people that you're claiming people not to be or to be, or whatever your position is in that argument, if you don't use the source, then you're misrepresenting the whole perspective of the argument, and you should stay out of it. Chavis, you got something, bro? He sleep. We done knocked him out. Sute, you got something before we get out?
Man, I just say I'm gonna rely on the data. You know what I'm saying? I ain't even trusting. If we talking about Morocco, I ain't even trusting the Berber from Morocco. Nope. Show me the primary evidence, and I rock with that. You know what I'm saying? If all that other nonsense, because we know they're a lie.
Man,
you know they're a lie. And I got something in the chamber about the heritage. These sub-Saharan African descendants of slaves in North Africa. This little conversation I just had, the dialogue with Chief and I guess a Berber from Morocco. It inspired me to go ahead and drop it and quit holding it. So I told him I'm gonna screenshot your comments and I'm gonna add them to the slides. So just be looking out for that, man. I probably drop that sometime this week. I want to add a couple more slides to it. I just got a new piece of work, Berbers and the Blacks. That's the title of it. So I'm gonna definitely get into that a little bit before I go on and drop it. It might be some couple of more slides I might need to add. So yeah, man. That's it, man. Appreciate y'all for coming through.
Hold on. I ain't see that part. So you telling me that he's still using? He pulled the Moroccan Berber out on you in that conversation.
Yep.
This was shit.
Yep. And it was like, what does slavery got to do with race? It was Europeans that was enslaved in North Africa too. I'm like, first of all, bro, that's not my business. Second of all, Berbers and Arabs from North Africa enslaved blacks just for being black. That's what it had to do with racism. Like you can't play that. Like it ain't got shit to do with color. Like nah, bro, don't play with me like that. I'm on my shit.
We got too much evidence. We got too much evidence that substantiate that they use skin color, a phenotype, as a enslavement tool, as an identifier to enslave or to look down on. We just read it. You know what I'm saying? We just reiterated it. So to play on your ignorance, and you know what I'm saying? That's my problem. When you try to play on one's ignorance, you know what I'm saying? That's where the whole foul stuff come in at, man, because you sitting here and you telling me, and we reading all these Arabs. We reading the Arabs. Now, this is the funny thing. We're reading the Arabs' point of view. We're not reading the Africans' point of view. We read what the Arabs saying, and bro, the Arabs are cockier than the Portuguese was when they came in West Africa. I thought the Portuguese, when I was reading literature and I was reading the Portuguese literature about how they were coming in and enslaving and doing business and stuff like that, and how they were manipulating and getting over and all that, I thought the Portuguese, when they wrote their chroniclers, I thought they were the most cockiest people in the world. But after reading all these Arab accounts, ain't no man, they don't even measure up. They don't measure up, bro. Mistake. And he did boy using a dang on is pulling this person around. We don't know who the identity of this person is. They could be claiming whatsoever, and that person getting used to argue about the ethnicity and the phenotypical complexion of the image. Boy, that's disheartening.
Yeah, then he like the Berber dude like well, the Berbers in Mali don't enslave black people. They don't practice enslaving black people. And I'm like, okay, well, who is the dominant Berber group in Mali? The Tuareg. Do the Tuareg enslave black people? Yes.
Hell
We
yeah.
know this for a fact. Like, come on, bro. You can't play me. He must thought I didn't know shit about
Yeah.
what I was talking about. I
Most
guess. I
of
don't know.
them, yeah, most of them don't think that we know what we know. You know what I'm saying? Because they really ain't paying attention to it. They so caught up in trying to disprove the Amarat squad and all of that they don't know that it's people under them is doing just as much research, you know what I'm saying, on the subject matter than the squad is. They're bagging the squad up in the argument if necessary. You know what I'm saying? And then James' point, he makes an excellent point. He says some folks talk about they don't care about the language and culture. They just like knowledge. But you got to get into the language and culture of a people to understand their worldview. So you feel it to comprehend, yeah. So well, they so they will never get the answer to their question because they fail to go into the language and the culture. That's why they say, well, I ain't got to learn no meta nature to understand. Blah, blah, blah. No, bro, you do. You got to understand. You got to understand. You do need to learn meta nature because it's going to help you distinguish how the Remich looked at the rest of the world, especially their neighbors and the people that surrounded them. They saw them a certain way. That's why you read. They saw themselves a certain way. That's why you learn and you read. But, you know, some people are not going to go that far. They're going to stay at Wiki, like I said. They're going to stay at Wiki. They're going to drag around a Moroccan Berber. They're going to, you know, continue to make these false classifications, you know, and the mistake without doing the homework. Like when you look at this whole phenotypical argument, the validity of it is there. So now I ain't listening to no racist Berbers, and I'm not listening to no. I'm with Chef on that one. Give me somebody in Libya. give me somebody in Nubia. You know what I'm saying? Give me somebody give me some people in there that can go back a little bit and get us some more knowledge before the air. You know what I mean? And so on and so forth. There's things there that actually help us be able to identify how they looked at things before classifications existed. And we know these classifications are foreign and come from foreigners, and that helped incite tribal differences already and beliefs already because of cultural differentiations. Then, you know, it's just given, man, that people distinctively drew a line. They are sub-Saharan African, they blacks, they ain't us, we go enslave them. You know, they're already down there going to war with each other anyway. So we just gonna go down there and capture who we need to, bring them back, slang them on through the Iberian slave trade, slang them on through the trans-Saharan slave trade, slang them on through the transatlantic slave trade. You know, you had people orchestrating, sending us in two different ways, sending us east, sending us west, sending us north. The only direction that sub-Saharan Africans didn't get sent was south. Because the more south you go, it's still more African that look just like the sub-Saharan Africans.
Except for that damn South Africa, boy.
Yeah. Except for South Africa at a typical point where Europeans had infested South Africa. But prior to the European, you know what I'm saying, colonizers coming into South Africa, you know, the identifiers was likewise. They were similar, you know, different shades of skin tones in the area that were non-European. But yeah, man, you know, I'm not gonna hold everybody up, man. I think we kind of laid out a little argument here. I do see Brother Unk in the chat. What's good, bro, Unk? I know he was supposed to do pseudo killers. I don't know what happened with that. He was supposed to do real black atheists. I don't know what happened to that. You know what I'm saying? You got people that's looking for Sunday school, and you didn't even do that. So I don't know what Unc on. He act like he writing a book, but we don't even know what's up with that. We ain't got no book cover, no book title, no nothing. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, we just gonna stick to the evidence and the facts, man, and we just gonna lay it down. I'm gonna give it a little bit more. So I think the God Killer trying to sneak in the building. Yeah, appreciate that show. And yeah, I ain't want to hit you with the science with Sean today. I just wanted to come in and, you know, since I'm cloud chasing, you know what I mean? Diary of a Cloud Chaser. I wanted to come in and do my Diary of a Cloud Chaser and get into the racism in Arab Africa. Notice how I titled it. And it can get deeper, man. But yeah, if anybody really more interested in knowing our perspectives and how we stand on the scholarship, man, they really do need to get volume 2. I think that back to back, you know, those last 2 chapters in volume 2, we kind of we covered a lot because we really wasn't even talking about we were talking about the same subject, but we wasn't even using the same some of the same quotes. It just so happened to be that it just built on one another in a way that it just actually corroborated it. So when you told me what you was writing when you was done, I was like, oh yeah, this gonna go good.
Yeah, man, what happened to Reason? Where he at? Where Reason at?
Yeah, so the God Killer was supposed to be breaking down the little RZA Islam stuff, but apparently RZA Islam is a no-show or maybe a reschedule. I don't know, because he ain't said nothing about that. But he here, he speak for himself.
Oh man, yeah, ran
What's
off.
going on, brothers? What's going on, brothers?
Peace, bro.
What up, dude, man? How y'all doing, man? Black African Power, man.
Black African Power.
Man, I don't know, man. They probably realize they look at some of our shows, man, and realize they need to study up some more. One gonna be that easy pushover, you know, giving ultimate respect to the Nation of Islam. That wasn't going down. I'm just gonna have a nice, you know, friendly conversation on, you know, why we should be vaccinated as opposed to why we should be. Man, y'all brothers doing a good job. Sean doing a great job. And man, we know what it is, man. We got a lot of people talking crazy. So I think, you know, the bros been chilling, you know, specifically the Raw Squad, but you know, we're gonna get back on that. We'll get that straight. Yeah, we'll get that.
Is what it is. Like, you know, like, I said this too. I said this one before. I said when the session got quiet, people who wasn't interested in the meta nature began to start acting like they was interested in it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And then the noise got loud enough to all of a sudden now, you know, look, the whip got to get cracked again.
Yeah.
It's the same on the other end too. Like you got these, you know, I'm not calling these people Google scholars because they have a form for Google scholars who actually are really on a scholastic level. And some of these Google scholars, because they putting out found scholarship online for you to actually be able to source it. And they ain't, these people are not Google scholars. They something else. And I don't know what they are, man, but they don't read, you know what I'm saying, and not studying. If they do read, they're reading so much or they're snippet or screenshotting certain points, but then, you know, they never have context, which means their libraries is very low. You have a low library and you're trying to argue with people who can, you know, go back 100 books, you know, or 200 books and pull some old arguments up that deal with the stuff, man. Like, I don't get that. And then
a low library. You mean no libraries?
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Come on, man. Look, check this out, man. Sometimes you give the people a break. Yeah, it's time to finish it off now, though. Yeah, we got a lot of homework. So you know, it's time just to come back. That's all. You know, we gave them a break. Now you got new meta-nature scholars like Line Lex,
Let me put this on.
Shaka.
Let me put this on.
It's fun.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny how they start peeping their heads back up out the dirt.
Mm-hmm.
They thought the coast was clear. They thought they.
You breaking up,
That's Woo. That's Woo calling me. Hold on.
He calling you right now.
Mm-hmm. Woo.
Chef. Well, it ain't showing too good on my screen. But yeah, don't play with me, Chef. I got the book right here. I don't know why it's showing up like this though.
Yeah, I got that one too. The cover just show like that, but the words show clear and clean.
Yeah. I'll throw that out there for sure. Yeah. He said read that. I already read it, Chef. Yeah. And they give in the opening part of this book, man, he give a good argument. Yeah. Good argument right here. And see, this is why I got these books, the Tariq al-Sudan and the Tariq al-Fatish, is because when you're dealing with those works and you're dealing with West Africa, you also get the worldview of those Arabs and how they view things, and how they wrote about the Askiyas, you know what I'm saying, and how they wrote about everybody, everybody around that time. So yeah, I got it. Yeah. I had to throw that out there, show. I know Aunt just dropped off, but I know he's coming right back. You know what I'm saying? So we're all along. Y'all wouldn't hit him with something. Google Scholar crazy. He said, let me go back to his comment. He said, that's very disrespectful to Google Scholars like me. That boy crazy, boy. He be going in, yo. He be going in. Yeah. But hey, so I know my boy Tim listening. I don't want to change the subject too much. I'm gonna let Unc come back and get to it, what he was trying to clear up. But I was talking to my bro Tim, and we building our Facebook, and you know what I'm saying. And I was trying to let him know, like, bro, don't send me an Instagram. Don't send me nothing that's on Instagram. Send me the source, like the article or whatever that's being stated in the video, because Instagram only gonna let you put so much of the information out, and you're not really gonna get the context of what what that little video gonna be about. No matter who voice is in, it can be taken out of context. And I say that because it's very crucial for us to try to ask for the correct information so that we can disseminate that information, discern, and then we either can refute it or accept it. And we're in the middle of this pandemic, and there's a lot of misuse or misrepresentation of information that's allowing certain things to slide through the cracks. Like, we got people that's misinforming other people so much so that, some people dying, and then we have people admit, we have experts admitting, and, I was sitting on this information for a minute, but we have people admitting that the COVID deaths, that number 550,000 deaths in the United States, is actually an undercount. That the actual deaths are like 900,000 people in the US alone. That's 300,000 more than the Spanish flu. And the deaths are steadily increasing because we're still in the middle of the pandemic. But I was kind of sitting on it because I knew that when I did come back with a science with Sean, that, I might want to talk about this research that was done that has now been reiterated by Fauci and others, And I think John Hopkins, like Unc said, John Hopkins might have did something on it. Yeah, David C. Conrad's work, Empires of Medieval West. Yeah, I got that too. I got that physical. I got a couple physicals. That last book, that's the only book that, you know, a couple of books that I get like PDF. Because I really don't try to PDF the books because it's hard for me to read the PDF. I just gotta have the physical copies. Let me put this on there too for Chef. This was Chef. Views from Arab scholars and merchants. You see what I'm saying? Like, you know, this is similar. This is like similar to the corpus. This is similar to, you know how the corpus is written. This is similar to how the corpus is written. It's similar to how the corpus is written. How I got all the merchants and all that in there. And it's not long either. As you can see, it's 120 something pages. But you know, we go through some of the stuff. And you know, I got this for that, you know, to corroborate a lot of some other stuff that we talk about. You know, Khaldun and all them. It's got Batuta. It's got a little bit more on Batuta than anything. In this, see, I got some stuff underlined and all that old stuff. I ain't bookmarked this up. Look, chapter 11, the kingdom of the Berber Mountains. I'm gonna read that to y'all. Let's see what he say. This is Al-Umari. He says, in the land of Sudan, there are also 3 independent white Muslim kings who are Berbers. The Sultan of Air, the Sultan of Damashu, and the Sultan of Tameka. The 3 are Muslim kings in the south of the west, between Morocco, the kingdom of Sultan al-Hassan, and the country of Mali and its neighbors. Each of them is an independent sovereign. No one of them rules another, but the greatest is the king of Air. They are the Berbers and dress more or less like the Moroccans in the durah, except that it is narrower, the turban with the chin band. Having no horses, they ride camels. Neither the Marib Sultan of the Morocco nor the ruler of Mali has an authority over them. They live as desert dwellers. Dew on meat and milk grain is very scarce with them. Sheikh Said al-Dakhali told me that he passed through their country on one of his journeys, but he did not remain long among them as they were short of food. Let me get my charge. Boom. It says, Zawawi told me that these Berbers possess inhabited mountains that produce many fruits. What is under the control of these 3 is about half of what the king of Mali possesses, or a little more. The latter enjoys a greater income because of his proximity to the land of the infidels, for the place where the gold sprouts is there, and he can cohorse them. His income is great for this reason, and becomes of the abundance of goods that are sold in this country, and what he gains for forays into the lands of the infidels. The land of the former, on the contrary, is sterile, and they have no opportunity to earn. They make living principally from their animals. Notice how they use the words infidels. You know what I'm saying? And then they said there's 3 white kings. So yeah, man, this is why we're telling you that you need to get that that volume 2. Cause me and Sute go in on it, you know, in volume 2, you know, my chapter, I'm talking about white rule in West Africa. You know what I'm saying? I'm talking about that. And we break it down. So I get a little science in that, and we flip the script. So we bang, man. And then we get to dealing with the accounts of that what's that famous dude, black people, everybody be quoting, the Berber dude who was a Christian first, then he was captured, and then he turned around and changed his name.
Damn.
I can't think his name off the top of my head. Well, I'm tripping. I got the book right here. We take a look at his accounts, and his name his name before he changed his name was Al Hassan B. Muhammad Al Wazan Al Zayati. Yeah, but Pope Leo X gave him a different name. And this is where you get the man called Leo Africanus. Leo Africanus. We deal with his accounts. And if you don't know anything about Leo Africanus accounts, his geography was wrong about West Africa. It said that he wasn't in some parts of West Africa that he claimed to have been in. And the geography, Muslim geography, was really, really, really messed up. They called the Niger River the Nile River once before. And we got people over here confused about that. Yeah, they call the Niger the Nile. If you go look on this channel, I did a little 3-minute snippet on the Niger River. And you know, that was substantial in dealing with what we needed to deal with. But yeah, man, in order to understand the perspective of your enemies or your oppressors, you got to read about them. You know, John Henry Clark told you that. You know what I'm saying? I just approved somebody messaging in the thing, man. Facebook tripping. But yeah, hold on, I'm gonna pull it up for y'all. We'll get into that. Y'all got Unc on the phone. They arguing. They doing an inner squad debate about a source. Let me find it for y'all, man. I know a lot of people then said, oh, also, man, we had a great show on Kofi Pasai Research Team on our YouTube channel. Man, y'all gotta go check that show out, man. We had some brothers on there getting it in, man, dealing with the Timney. What you know about it. I'm gonna play these two videos real quick. If I don't come back before then, I'm gonna get off there, but I'm gonna show you how they made some mistakes. I'm gonna play part 1 and then I'm gonna double back with part 2. They both 9 minutes long, so bear with me.
The Nile of the Blacks, Nile el Sudan, as the composite West African river came to be known, first makes its appearance in the literature with the Khatib al-Masalik wal al-Mamalek of the Andalusian scholar of Abu Abiyad al-Bakri, who was not apparently in debt to Ptolemy. Writing in 1067, he made use of the work of al-Warwick, a geographer of the previous century, but evidently drew extensively on oral accounts of merchants who had visited West Africa. He refers to the Nile in several places, first as the river on which Takru and a number of other small states stood. This is clearly the river Senegal, which al-Bakri indicates, but does not directly state, flows into the encompassing ocean, the Atlantic. Later, when describing a route from ancient Ghana eastward, he remarks that at a certain point, the traveler meets the Nile coming out of the land of the blacks. One travels along it to the Tariq, when it turns south into, once again, the land of the blacks. Here he is clearly referring to the great bend of the river Niger, which flows through the inland delta along the Saharan fringes and then turns south near modern Borum to continue on its way to the delta in modern Nigeria. Al-Bakri then does not distinguish in his nomenclature between the river Senegal and the river Niger, even though a close reading of his text would show that his first Nile flows east-west, and his second Nile west-east. The implications of this were not grasped by later geographers. So strong was the theory that the Nile was the mother of all African hydrography that when Ibn Battuta reached the Niger near Ségou in 1352, he assumed it was the Nile and did not apparently ask its name. Learning that it flowed on eastward past Timbuktu and Gao, he tells readers that it flowed on eventually passing Dongola in Nubia, from which one would suppose that he thought it was either the great Egyptian Nile or a tributary of it. Perhaps the most influential of all Arab geographers, both on Arab writers and later European geographers, was al-Sharif al-Idrisi, who wrote his Universal Geography, Nuzhat el-Maski fi Iqraq el-Afiq, a pleasure trip for him who longs to penetrate distant lands, a sort of armchair tourism for the Norman king Roger II of Sicily in 1150. The basis of al-Idrisi's physical geography of Africa is Ptolemy, but he has clearly been influenced by Arab writers on the hydrography of Western Africa, even though he does not, for example, mention al-Bakri among its sources. In al-Idrisi's work, we find the full theoretical development of the two Nile river system, and this reappears in several later writings down to Ibn Khaldun, who repeats it without question. The key passage reads as follows. In this fourth section of the first clim occurs the splitting of two Niles. I mean the Nile of Egypt, which cuts through the land and flows from south to north. Most of the towns of Egypt are on both banks of it and of its island also. The second part of the Nile flows from the east to the far west, and on this part of the Nile are all the towns of the blacks, or most of them. These two Niles have common source in the mountain of Kimar, which means the moon. Ptolemy's moon's lunar, the first part of which is 16 degrees beyond the equator. The source of the Nile is in the mountains from 10 springs. 5 of these pour forth and gather in a large swamp. The other 5 also flow into another swamp. From each of these swamps, 3 rivers flow, all of which empty into a single very large swamp. This very large swamp, which we might identify in reality with the Sud flood region of the southern Sudan, is soon called a lake by al-Idrisi, and he says that at its lower end there is a mountain which splits the lake in two. One part of the mountain goes to the northwest, taking along with it the Nile of the Blacks, while the other part follows the eastern half of the mountain and goes into a northerly direction to become the Nile of Egypt. The Nile of the Blacks empties into the Sea of Darkness, Bahir el-Zamat, i.e. the Atlantic Ocean. His hydrographic scheme is clearly illustrated in the map of Africa he drew up, which is also reproduced by Ibn Khaldun in his Muqaddimah. Medieval Arab scholars recognize 4 great rivers in the world, reflecting the biblical tradition, though their identity varies among authors. Common to all lists are the Euphrates and the Nile. It was natural then to suppose that a river such as the Niger, or similar grand proportions to the Nile, was just a branch of it. From this position, it was perhaps but a small step to see the 2 other major rivers that Arabs came across in West Africa, the Senegal and the Komandugu Yobe, as being part of this branch. No one, it would seem, ever saw all 3, and the fact that 2 of them, the Niger and the Komodu or Yobe, flow west-east was conveniently overlooked. The key factor seemed to have been that one did flow east-west and empty into the encompassing ocean, just as the Egyptian Nile emptied into the Mediterranean, and the Mogadishu Nile emptied into the Indian Ocean. The eastern reaches of the encompassing ocean, a fine example of symmetry of nature. Another factor that may have been the association of one of the rivers, the Komodo Yobe, with the large swamp-like Lake Chad, even though the river flowed into it and not out of it. This Western African Nile was more important as a symbol than it was as a physical fact, or a series of reconstructed facts, just like the European geographers' later construction of the so-called Mountains of Kong, stretching from the Senegal River to Lake Chad at about 12 degrees north, which served to discourage consideration of the possibility that the Niger turned south and emptied into the Atlantic. Using the comparative reality of the Egyptian situation and the partial evidence of some Arab geographers in relation West Africa, El-Drisi plants almost all known towns of the region along the Nile. The river is shown as virtually a straight line, and it is designed to represent not merely a physical but a physiological barrier. To the north of it, on the frontiers of the lands of Islam, were the towns visited Muslim merchants whose populations were by the 12th century, at least in part, Muslim: Tokru, Silla, Taraka, Kalkal, and others. There on the banks of both the Senegal and the Niger, they met with West African merchants who exchanged their goods for gold, slaves, and other items. They did not, so far as we can tell, venture across the Nile, the other banks of which were said to be inhabited by naked pagans, often reputed to be cannibals, known under the cant name of Lam Lam, Dam Dam, or Nam Nam, who seem to turn up wherever there is any Nile. On the one hand, they had no real need to, unless they sought to discover the sources of gold. On the other hand, crossing the river would have taken them beyond the lands of Islam and beyond a point where they could mount their camels and simply head back home. It was dangerous country in both body and soul. In reality, most of the towns that the North African informants of El-Idrisi and his predecessors did business in were, in fact, on one of the great rivers. It is not very surprising then that El-Idrisi should also place the town of Ghana on the Nile, indeed on both banks. In conformity with this theory, in fact, Kumbi Sali, the likely site of the merchant town of Ghana close to the royal city, was several hundred kilometers from either Senegal or the Niger.
Let me stop right there. We come back and I'm gonna give y'all part two. Part two get more interesting than part one. I had to break it up so, you know, there's a lot of reading. I'm gonna give you the source too. The source actually in the description of the video. As you can see, not many people actually saw it. But continuation right here. Hunwick's work, his 2005 book. And I give you the page numbers, just so you know I ain't lying.
Now Al-Sudan continued. This leads us to another geographical red herring for which Al-Idrisi seems to be responsible, but which proved to be such longevity that the British geographers were solemnly discussing it and trying to locate it on their maps in the early 19th century. That is the land, the island of Wangara. The term Wangara is first used, though with a confused spelling, by al-Bukhari, which applied it to a group of non-Arab long-distance traders who dealt in gold in ancient Ghana. Essentially correct, for it is a term used until recently in the Middle Niger and Hasaland for manning merchants, otherwise known as the Daula. El-Idrisi, however, makes of Wangara a piece of land, an island surrounded by the Nile to the east of Ghana. In his text, he tells us that it is inundated by the Nile waters annually and that after the flood, people swarm over it to search for gold. Susan Keach McIntosh has suggested that what Al-Idrisi was really describing was the inland delta of the Niger in modern Mali, which stretches from about the vicinity of Sand in the south to Godoum area in the north. Certainly, El-Idrisi dimensions for the island, 300 miles long and 150 miles wide, are close enough. And this statement that the flood begins in August also matches the reality of the Niger River inundation regime. But the identification is not so simple as that. For the theory and reality are extremely intertwined in Al-Idrisi, and he combines two separate types of information to produce a hybrid and mythical third. The original area of Wangara was undoubtedly the Arafirius, Bambuhu region, situated between the Bafing and the Bakhor tributaries of the Senegal River and still known as Gangaren, which probably gave its name to merchants who visited it regularly in pursuit of gold to sell to North African merchants. Though it does not become inundated annually, it is nevertheless surrounded almost completely by rivers. On the other hand, it is likely that when Gaura merchants were establishing themselves in towns of the interior delta, such as Dai and perhaps Kabara, as early as the first half of the 12th century. Modern Jin, too, may have originally been settled by Wangara merchants who made it their base while doing business with non-Muslims or Old Jin until the ruler of that town converted to Islam in the 1200th century and moved his court to the new site. Accounts of the area from such merchants of the area would have filtered back up the Saharan trails and into North Africa. Thus, what we most probably have is a conflated description of the Bafing Bakhor Wangara, where people really did find gold, and the interior delta of the Niger, where Wangara merchants were operating and which really did become inundated annually. It is even possible that Aldrisi, Ghana, which he describes as consisting of two towns of opposite banks of the River Nile near the land of Wangara, may be a conflation of accounts relating to an earlier capital of ancient Ghana and more recent accounts of the Old New Jin. As noted earlier, El Idrisi was the Arab geographer who seems to have most influenced European geographers down to the 19th century. And the reason for this is very simple. His was the earliest work of its kind to be published in Europe. An Arabic text on the shorthand version was published in Rome in 1592. An Italian translation of this appeared in 1600, followed by a Latin transcription in 1619 and published in Paris. The other Arab writer whose work was to have a lasting influence was the early 16th century Moroccan Andalusian Al-Hassan B. Muhammad al-Wazan al-Zanani, better known as the European writings as Leo Africanus. He had actually traveled in West Africa, though, to less places than he claims, and obtained his Latin name when the ship in which he was traveling in the Mediterranean was seized by pirates, and he wound up being presented as a gift to the Pope Leo X. Whilst in Rome, it is not clear whether he never returned home. He wrote on the account of North Africa, Egypt, and West Africa, mainly based on his own personal knowledge and what he had learned from his contemporaries, but influenced, nevertheless, by early Arab writers to whom he occasionally refers, including El-Idrisi. He wrote in Italian, which was then polished up by his publisher, Ramesso, for inclusion in his collection of travels published in 1550. A French translation followed in 1556. And in the same year, a Latin translation was published in Antwerp. Finally, an English translation was published in London in 1600. Thus, Europe acquired an actual description of Timbuktu, whose existence had been known to at least some European scholars from the maps of Jewish cartographers of Majorca since the late 14th century. Gayo, Agadez, several of Hassa's city-states, and Borno, what they also acquired was further confusion of the question of the West African Nile, to which Leo gave his name Niger, which it still bears in Onwangara. Leo's Niger seems to flow out of Lake Chad, and although he alludes to another view, perhaps he had read Ibn Battuta, namely that it starts in mountains in the west and flows eastward. He disowns it based on what he claims to be a personal experience. In the middle of the land of the blacks flows the river Niger, which begins in the desert called Siu, where it emerges from a great lake. According to what our geographers claim, the Niger is a branch of the Nile which disappears underground and reemerges to form a lake. Some say that the river originates in mountains in the west and flows eastward to turn into a lake. That is not correct. In fact, we have traveled along it, starting in the eastern Timbuktu and flowed on current in Guinea, Jin, and the Kingdom of Mali, both to west of Timbuktu. This apparent eyewitness testimony did a great disservice to European geographers, as did the placing of Gangara among the Hassa states and calling it kingdom. Cartographers such as Dutchman Blue in 1664 and the Frenchman The Anvil 1750 struggled to make sense of such conflicting information. Blue shows that the Niger flowing out of the lake in Central Africa close to upper reaches of the Egyptian Nile, flowing into and out of the second lake, and then into a third lake close to Gangara before passing to yet another lake and finally to the Atlantic in the delta of the River Senegal is but one channel. The Anvil, who an English knowledge of the River Gambia, shows these as two distinct rivers flowing east-west into the Atlantic. The Niger appears to have its source in the west, not far from the source of the River Senegal, and to end in the lake to the east of the Wangaran towards tributaries of the Egyptian Nile. Here, then, is a river that flows from nowhere to nowhere, and is joined to Hausa country by the River Limlam, a throwback to El Adrisi. This was still essentially the position where Arrowsmith showed the Niger or Nile El Abid or Nile El Abid Slaves River, flowing past Timbuktu, past Barisu or Bassa, and near Yura, both known to the Anvil, after which its course reflects Andresen geography, complete with an island of Wangara that is said to be overflowed in August. In ancient, long since forgotten towns such as Turku or Tarka, Yarnisi, and Sinkamar, only after missions of Denham and Clampton in Tripoli, through Borno and Sokoto in 1822 to 24, and the Lander brothers' exploration of the Niger from near Yara to its delta in 1830 was the map to be straightened out, and the course of the Niger traced from its source in the Fouta-Djallon highlands of Guinea to its mouth on the Atlantic coast of Nigeria.
So there you have it. That's just one of many errors that the Arabs actually make when they get to talking about the geography. It's much more complex than that. But Afrikaners make other mistakes as well. A lot of research went into actually trying to pull that information out to bring it to y'all in volume 2 as part of the argument about whites ruling blacks. Balad El Sudan. But yeah, this is what they called the Niger River, Nil al Sudan, the Nile of the blacks. And like I said, I mean, anybody want to go grab it, you can go back. It's in the things. We keep it sourced up, but I really wanted to make sure that we actually knew that, because we try to, you know what I'm saying? Scholarship holds their head on Afrikaners in some areas, and Afrikaners is the root of a lot of confusion in scholarship. But it would take more modern scholars like Hunwick, Levitzian, and others to dispel some of the information or challenge it. Gomez, to challenge some of this stuff that the Arabs was writing about, because they dominated the information. The conquerors wrote themselves into history and from their perspectives. And the Berbers just associated themselves with the conquerors in the sense that it gave them validity to feel like they were rulers as well. But it goes back to the point that I made about Batuti when he came back to West Africa and he saw West Africans practicing Islam and acting like kings. He was, how dare they? You know what I'm saying? So there's a lot that still need to be uncovered, man. Again, from Spears to Pen, y'all need to get that book. You need to get volume 1, 2, and 3 actually. Spears of the Masi, from Spears to Pen, and then Spiritual Combat 1, 2, and 3. We do an excellent job on trying to bring you West African history, African American perspective as well, and incorporate all those different lanes into the minds, the historical survey of the minds of African warrior scholars. So Look for some work to come out of the everybody's cooking again. It's quiet, you know, when it get too quiet, it just means we cooking. So everybody's cooking again, and we back in the lab. So you might see a string of books or again come out this year from us. Volume 4 is in the works, but we really haven't set any expectations or deadlines or anything like that. We have some other things that we're getting ready to get into as well. But, you know, as a team perspective, we're all trying to do that. Individually, you might see Kofi, me, Black Panther, Sutek, Satep and Ra, T'Challa, might be dropping some individual projects. The newest member, Chavis, who on the channel ain't said nothing. We just trying to get him acclimated into what, you know, but what he want to do, and he got some ideas. So he's actually already, I think, starting on some stuff that he working on to be in volume 4. But, you know, we're doing this because we're trying to not romanticize African culture and history and things of that nature, but actually give you the real. Man, the book I'm working on right now is just going to be the last part of what I've been dealing with over the last 2 years as far as my research in a certain area. And then I'm getting back into some more cultural things, and I'm gonna try to pull some of that stuff apart and see what I can learn from a lot of that. And then, you know, it's all about the team, what the team can do from that point on, because, you know, I'll be maybe 3 or 4 books in at that point. I also got another children's book that I got in the works. And then I have that, I got this other book that I'm going to write that's what SARS-CoV-2 taught me. I got that coming. And then we'll see how it all shape up. You know what I mean? So we really ain't got time to argue with fools. We just got the homework, and we love to share the information with people. So, man, we appreciate everybody tuning in. You know, hopefully everybody liked the show, share the show. You know what I mean? No matter if it's the first hour or the second hour of this particular video, hopefully it was enough information for everybody to learn something from and build on. And if you go back and you know replay this video, then you know we'll be there. Hopefully, the YouTube family don't take this down like they did the last video, misunderstanding the intent of the video because of the title. So yeah, man, enjoy this. If they do take it, we got it. I mean, it's still stored in our back. We just have to go and do all this other stuff to bring it back to life, but that I don't want to do. And man, I appreciate it. Stacey, I see you in the chat, bro. Appreciate you. Great show, brother. It's so much information. Yeah, they don't understand about themselves as criminal. Facts. A lot of people don't understand how much they exaggerate. Exactly, Khalil. The Arabs, they did a hell of a job exaggerating. They talking about themselves. Man, they literally said, listen, and I don't think y'all understand this. They literally said that there were 3 African kingdoms. I mean, that there were 3 white kingdoms in West Africa that they ruled. 3 prosperous kingdoms. With no substantial evidence, they make the claim that there was white people ruling West Africa. Y'all think that I'm not making it up. I'm not making it up. The name of my chapter is Balad El Badan, Land of the Whites, White Rule in Ancient West Africa. It's the last chapter in our book. And now we know why they saying white rule in West Africa. Get volumes. Listen. Get this book. I ain't saying get this book because I'm in it or I'm a part of the people that participated to be in it. I'm saying this from a scholastic perspective. If you're looking at advancing knowledge and getting to know more about West Africa and or the Arab world or the Arab perspective, it's in this book. It's here. It's here. Me and Sute, we go back to back. We go back to back, man. We go back to back. Racist concepts and attitudes of the medieval Arabs. That's Sute. His chapter's before mine. It's here. We talk about this stuff. And of course, you know, we source it up. Sutek chapter got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 sources. Mine, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. 14. Right. Yeah, 14. In that chapter. So it's there, man. The material is there, it's written. You know what I'm saying? It is, we do what we can to help people do what they need to do to advance it. I'm gonna put the link to the learning market in the chat, Snowball. And if you go in the chat, all you gotta do is scroll down the learning market, and you scroll down, and then let me put it on the screen. The link that I just put in the chat will take you here. When it take you here, you can scroll down and you can see volume 1, volume 2, children's book, Kofi children's book, my personal book, Kofi personal book, volume 3, the quiz and cards, and then put a name with a face. You just hit the link, man. Add it to the cart. Go ahead and do your thing. We'll get that book out to you ASAP. I get the instant email. I'm going to the post office in the morning. I'm sending books out. I got some books to send out in the morning anyway. Yeah, but we did the work, man. In volume 3, I come back to West Africa. In volume 3, I come back to West Africa. Sutek go the melanin route on me. And I get into the European myth of Prester John in West Africa. So I deal with questionable counts of Mali Koi Kankan Musa, and then I do the European myth of Prester John in West Africa. Kofi talk about secret societies and their purpose in Africa. T'Challa deal with musical combat and the best of both worlds. The science of self is Chris. Self-preservation. Chris got another chapter in there too. My bad. Where he dealing with resistance with affection. Sutek Black is beautiful. Sun worship by Satepan Ra. What's wrong with starting your own Kamoyo by Kofi? Kamoyo gonna be a big subject, a big topic this year. Even in the conscious community first Pan-African journal in the volume 2 of Killmonger's Corner, I'm in West Africa. I did so like 1, 2, 4, 5, like about 5 or 6 things that I did is all focused on West Africa. And what I'm getting ready to write is gonna be about West Africa. What I'm gonna do in probably volume 4 gonna be about West Africa, possibly.
Yeah, I'm coming back to West Africa, West Africa and North Africa. The relationship between two different kingdoms.
Yeah, so I mean, we're trying to make sure that everybody is, you know, paying attention, man. You know, everybody paying attention. Man, and on that note, man, I'm gonna end this one here. I'm gonna end it here. We gonna get out of here, man. Y'all can catch the replay on the flip side. Appreciate everybody for supporting.
Log in to KofiPaisaTV.com and get Spears of the Masi Volume 1 by Kofi Paisa Research Team, from Spears the Pen Volume 2 by Kofi Paisa Research Team, Spiritual Combat Volume 3 by Kofi Paisa Research Team, One Night Before Bed by Any Harek Shun Kalfani, Kalawa's Trip to the Motherland by Kofi Paisa, From Cocaine to Consciousness by Any Harek Shun Kalfani, As I Learn, We All Learn by Kofi Paisa. Also, if you want fresh merch, go to our online store, Family Connect Apparel, and get all the brands. Also, get our 54 deck of quiz and educational cards available now on KofiPaisaTV.com.